Okay, here we go. Hey man.
Hey,
So Josh Soloway, I have not known you for very long. It's been now for what, maybe a little more than a year?
probably right around there. Yeah.
Yeah, about a year. And I thought it'd be really fun to have you on. And then you wrote an article that uh that we want to talk about a little bit later.
Sounds good.
Um, yeah, but I thought I wanted to just get some insights into who you are and you know, because you're really an interesting guy. And I think I was contemplating what to call this video if I put it out there. And one of the titles that I thought of was "Don't judge a book by its cover" or something like that.
I think that's appropriate when it comes to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you're also a very jovial person, so you're always making fun and so forth. But anyway, so how did you end up in this area here in the southwest area of Virginia?
Yeah, I was looking for a career change back in 2008. And I left my job after 7 years of working up the ladder for them. And my brother was living out here at the time, and he was like, "Why don't you just come up here and find a job?" And I was like, "Okay." And I'm never do anything spontaneously. And I quit my job, moved up to Blacksburg, started working at an apartment community, trying to figure out my life, and then I got stuck here.
Yeah, that's what happens to people around here, right? Um, because in my case, I moved here from New York, and I hated it. I just hated this small town thing. It just didn't work with my system, and I always figured I'd leave, but I can never
Yeah.
imagine leaving now. It's just impossible. I could never get used to traffic again or high taxes and just so many people. I just like this area much better. So
Every 2 to 3 years, I try to leave, and then it doesn't happen.
yeah, yeah. It's like it sucks you in, and then you're settled and you're comfortable. You don't want to go anywhere.
Yep.
So where were you before that?
I was living in the Virginia Beach area for majority of my life. My dad was in the Navy, so we kind of got stuck there after he got stationed there. My family, I have family from Brooklyn and a family from Carlisle, Pennsylvania, so we're Northerners at heart, but got stuck in a southern state. So
Yeah, yeah, and it grows on you. But you no, so you have a lot of interests. I've noticed. Some of them have become sort of have become real income for you and extra, auxiliary income streams. Tell us a little bit about your creative side.
yeah, my current career is a hodgepodge of schizophrenia. I work for a company that works within the real estate field, specifically in an AI revenue management role for them, and so I work with customers in that side because I have about 12 years of operational experience. I'm now almost up to 20 years of full experience in that industry. And so I kind of just work there for my day job that pays the bills, gets me through everything. And I love it. I'm now almost a year and a half into owning a graphic design company, where I focus on working with small businesses, startups, to work on their logos, their brandings, their marketing. But it all stems from me being an artist. So a lot of this is also portraits and art for their companies and their clients and stuff like that. And then most recently, that spawned into a art charity that has formed this year, that we've been working through.
Is that the spark?
Yeah, that is Spark. Yep. That formed. We had our first ever meeting of the minds in January, and we produced our first art charity event in March. And then we've done four this year so far.
Yeah, and that's really nice to see. I attended one of them the last time. The others I couldn't, but I've at least been able to attend one of them.
Yeah, it was a
So
great one, the last one.
yeah, yeah, at the Beast, at the Beast. Yeah, and your art is kind of unique. It's not something that I've seen much of elsewhere. You know, the kind of things that you do. So
Yeah, I have a long history of art. Started when I was 8. I produced my first painting in geometric surrealism, which is an art form my uncle started. And then from there, I became an abstract artist, fine art, watercolors, gouache. And then 2018, I bought my first iPad, and it was all downhill from there.
uh, yeah, with the Procreate and
Oh, I started off with first manga script. It was my first one, and then I moved to Canvas, and then I eventually got to Procreate around 2019. After going through a bunch that I did not like, and then I realized what you could do with it. I was an art snob. I hated digital art. Couldn't stand
uh,
it.
I think most people in the art world really did, right? It's just like the transition to AI now. It's the same hatred that they had and animosity towards digital
Yeah.
when because I started, in the 1990s with advertising. We did there was no digital, very little digital. There was digital, but it was very minimal, right? Everything was film, print film. Everything was
Hmm.
scalpels and masks and airbrushing and paint and stuff. I mean, it was glue, and you had you needed some place to work and to lay out things, and it was a very different world. And then digital started coming in, and even animation. Back then we immediately when computers became available, animation started becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And but it was so crude compared and primitive compared to what we have now. I mean, my goodness, the world has changed.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Um, Now, did you ever have any art background, or what was your educational?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I took a lot of advanced art classes on top of like learning from my uncle, who was one of the biggest art influences in my life. He had his art up all around his house, and it was like a joy to go there when we did. And um, seeing all of that and taking the classes, I really was like, oh, I'm gonna be an art teacher. I want to do all these things. Mind you, I graduated high school when I was 11. So jumping into college was not a thing to do at 11 years old. It was not something I was ready for. And so I went into the career field, and art took a back seat for a while, until I was about 16 or 17, and that's when I started working as a makeup artist full time. And so I jumped from painting canvases to painting faces, and
Wow.
and then from there I learned studio effects makeup and like building my own, you know, working with silicone and things like that to create things. And I did that for a while, and that satisfied and that itch to create. And then I went back to canvases when I actually moved up here in 2008, because I left that world and started working in apartment communities, which are the boringest things to do. Uh, so nothing creative in that industry. So
Yeah, yeah, no. But it pays the bills better, I guess.
it does 100%. Did not have to worry about getting evicted at all.
Yeah, yeah. That's unfortunately how life works. Sometimes you can do what you love and make money, but most of the time, that's not exactly how it goes.
Why I love the company I work for now. They pay my
Yeah,
bills and I have a life outside of it. So that's all you can ask for.
exactly, exactly. So, so you, but you have a very unique perspective on life compared to, just your persona, your demeanor. and what people would expect. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know where you're hinting around for that, but I think there's a couple things that like play into my view on life. First, it comes from my parents and my background. My dad what grew up Jewish. He's a second generation. His family came in on Ellis Island, like and everything. We escaped Russia in the 1910s, when they were being kicked out of their town. So I have a really deep rooted respect for the country because it was the country that took my family in and protected us from there. And it's unique because even in that family, my grandmother was extremely Orthodox and grew up extremely Orthodox. And my grandfather's family, they were Reform, which is like the rebels, the black sheep. They were the non-denomination of Judaism. So they were an interesting pair. And then we have my mom, who was Catholic, super strict Catholic. Um, and so she has her background. And both of them somehow became massive hippies. So they come from these super strict backgrounds, became free-loving hippies, and eventually they had me. I'm the last born. I have an older brother and older sister. And we were in the Navy. We converted to Christianity, so I grew up in the church. I was very learned in the Bible. I read it 4 complete times by the time I was 14 years old in 4 different versions. I took many college classes when I was actually just a young teenager on theology. That was actually one path I was considering. Um, and and so
So no surprise there, by the way.
yeah, and so I have this very um weird background where it's hippie and it's constructive and strict and um it's everywhere. I mean, most Jews are Democrats, most Catholics are Republicans, most everybody's in the middle. I have an anarchist for family members, like, and growing up in Virginia Beach, I think, and having the ties to New York, we have a lot of variety of people. So I was always exposed to multiple points of view. And that's where I kind of take everything from. Like, if I can have a point of view, then so can somebody else. And let's see what it is, and let's see how we contrast and compare. And we go from there. So I don't have a genre I sit in at all. If you saw me on the street, kind of like you alluded to earlier, you would judge a book by its cover. I'm covered in tattoos. I have piercings. I don't speak eloquently. I curse a lot. Um, it's all this thing. And then you find out that I can control millions of dollars worth of budgets and I can dissect everything. And then I'm also art and philanthropy and caring. I'm a weird dude. I
That's
shouldn't
for
be.
so. So I didn't want to say anything. I'm glad you. That's why I wanted out of the horse's mouth, you know. But yeah, so I was also kind of shocked when I first saw you in church, showing up in church. I was like, this is the last guy, and I think I told you that. I said, this is the last guy I was expecting to meet in church. And so it's really refreshing, to meet someone like you who have such a, I mean, uh, just a very, very, what can you say? I don't want to call it weird, man. I want to say it's unique. It's
I love weird. Just
uh,
I love it. Like, I use that word so often because I think it's the most appropriate word for what it is. Like, I think unique is giving it too much credit. I think weird is correct.
so so I want to you wrote an article and you have a blog here on your website, and I don't think the article is on the website, is it? It's not
No,
published.
I do keep certain blogs away from my website. While I am the writer and I do control it, the only ones I attach to Wrong Side directly, which is my graphic design company, is the ones that are specific to art, small business, things like that.
Okay.
Because my
Yeah.
topics range, because the blog is my point of view as a human who does graphic design and art and works in different industries. That's my outlet, so it's tied to me, but it's not tied to the company completely. So,
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. Sometimes you have to keep your personal views a little bit shielded from the people you're going to do business with and so on. So you're not too out there. So I do the
yep.
same thing. I'm doing it less and less the older I get, but I care less and less, what people think.
Yep.
So, but yeah. So, and this has to do with you being a Jew, non-practicing Jew. You're actually a Christian, as we just said. You're a Christian, and you didn't study theology, but you were thinking about that. So you take your Christianity pretty seriously.
Yeah,
And
I took about 2 years worth of theology classes. But because of the way that I learn, I don't ever go for degrees. I go for what I want to learn. And so I took many classes on all religions. I studied everything from atheism to Catholicism to uh, Hinduism, Buddhism, like, and I always had a thirst for learning those type of things.
so okay, so that's very interesting. So how did you land after studying all those? Why did you land on Christianity? Because you
I
came
would
out
probably,
of Judaism and now you studied all the others, and you still land on Christianity. That's
well, it I don't think I think that's a simplified version of a complicated answer. I don't feel like I landed on Christianity. I left the church when I turned right around 20. It was a little under. And I didn't step foot into a church until July of this year.
okay.
Um, and I'm about to turn 40. So a very long stint of time between the two. And I became very critical of the church because I went to a church that was more akin to a cult after years of growth there, because power corrupts, and
Right.
so I had a very jaded point of view on it. Even though I was very learned in the subject, it became something that I didn't agree with what the church became, and so I left it. I went searching. I've done tons of, like, calling myself a spiritualist and calling myself a moralist. That was a hot 10 years. I called myself a moralist. And recently this year, after some things happened in my life, I said, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I kind of started having an inkling for it. And a friend of mine invited me to church. And I went and I said, there's a level of comfort there. And I don't know if it's akin to being, you know, oh, this is normal. I remember this. I did this for 20 years. This sounds great. Um, but trust me, like, from July until even today, I'm waiting for those trigger words. I'll start saying it. Start saying this. If you start saying this, I could tear this apart. And I haven't found it yet. And I've met with the one of the pastors multiple times. We're actually grabbing breakfast next week. Like, and it's a very different thing. And I think it's because none of these people really know me. They don't know my background, so they don't treat me any specific way. There's not a jaded point of view on me. And that's a very interesting thing to be in, because when you're not judged, you have more ability to be yourself.
Right. Well, that's how it's supposed to be, right? Um, and but so I was also very critical of the church. I also left the church, and the church that I grew up in, when I was a little bit earlier than you. I was in South Africa, and the church that I went to was a big, Lutheran type church. This is the Dutch Reformed Church, the Reformed Church, right? And so very
Fun.
Orthodox. I'm sorry.
I said super fun. I know those
Yeah, yeah,
churches.
yeah. And well, and I went through the whole uh, you know program as a child, for the whole thing, and you get accepted into the church. You do your catechisms and everything. And South Africa had border wars, and we had terrorism, and we had bombs going off in public places, in fast food restaurants, and in churches, in town squares, and um, there were, you know, Russian armaments on the border, and we lost people. We had compulsory military service. People died in these wars, and I asked. My dad was an elder in the church, and so I wanted to know when I went to high school, later in high school, I wanted to know, where exactly do our donations go? As if I'm paying any. I wasn't earning any money, but as if I was, right. I wanted to know, where do our donations go? So I asked a question, and my dad also asked a question, and uh, they didn't at first want to say anything, but later on it came out after digging that the church money, that these donations were going to African churches that were in turn, big international church organizations, right? That were in turn funding the terrorism in South Africa.
Wow.
So you imagine you're sitting in a church and you're paying, the donation plate comes by and you give money, and that money goes for a bomb that's going to explode next door, right? And so that was devastating to me. But anyway, so what was do you have your mind talking about what your complaint was with that?
Yes. So when we started at this church, the one I grew up at, and I was, I believe, 2 when we first started at that church, and they were just starting. Couple families, very small building, meeting, um, traditional stained glass windows, brick walls, cold pews, all those things. And it was homegrown, and it became this thing that was welcoming to all. As we had, at a time in the 80s when things were still kind of racy and stuff like that, we had white families, we had black families, we had Hispanic families, we had Asian families. We had all types there because that was a kind of homogenous view of Virginia Beach in general. Technically, it was in Norfolk for those listening that are from that area. It's Norfolk, but nobody knows that. So we um, and so it slowly grew, and it grew out of love because we had like a storehouse so people could come in, feed their families. And we grew up very poor, so sometimes that was our family that needed that. And um we fed. I don't think I ever remember a Thanksgiving at home. We never had a Thanksgiving at home. We fed the homeless at or just the needy, or just our families. Like, it didn't matter. Like, there was no like rule on it. It was, come and we will make you Thanksgiving dinner. And we did that every year until the year I left. I was a part of that. I cooked my first Thanksgiving when I was 21. Um, for myself. I used to cook for everybody else. We would cook 40 turkeys and everything else. And I cooked for myself. There was 3 of us, and I cooked hotel pans worth of food uh, because that's all I knew. Um, and everything was great. And then the church started growing, and we had to start having, multiple services. And then they got into like the prophecies and, the revival and all these things. And that was still fine, but that was what was growing the church. And then it slowly shifted from God says to I say because I read this scripture, and weaponizing the Bible against people. Um, the last 3 years, we had a church that was LGBTQ affirming. Um, What they used to tell us was it was a gay church and everybody there's gay and all of them are going to hell, so we're going to pray against them. And it actually ended up, now that I'm an adult, I know it was an LGBTQ affirming church, which means that the pastor actually wasn't gay. Most of the congregation wasn't gay, but some of them were. And we prayed against them. We literally actively prayed against them on Sunday mornings. And it just started rubbing me the wrong way because around the time that I was a mid-teen, I started working with a lot of gay people because I worked in the makeup industry. I
Yeah.
mean, gays, lesbian, transsexuals, like it was everybody worked in that industry. And I just started getting this feeling, this seems wrong. I don't know if it's even clicking on right, but it's definitely wrong. Um, and ultimately just had a falling out later on in life with it. And it caused me to have this distrust of like people who use the Bible and then weaponize it and say that, well, this scripture tells me that you're going to hell. Well, great. Technically, the Bible says that only God can judge. So you can't tell me I'm going to hell. You can say, hey, the Bible has these things in it. You might want to read up on them and see what you think, but you can't tell me I'm going to hell. Like that is it's directly against God.
Yeah,
And I,
I think Paul judges people, in every epistle. Jesus judged people, the Pharisees and the scribes and so forth. So judging is part of what we're supposed to do, but condemnation, there's a difference between so one of the because the other point of the part of the coin is that a lot of churches are so all about this hippie love Jesus, right? Jesus is just a dude, it's all about love, man. That's not Jesus either, you know. And so my perspective is that we have to love people, but you don't have to love the sin. And the the thing that churches get wrong is they go it's like black and white. They go either all the way this way, all the way that way. You know, one of the most unloving things one can do is not tell someone and warn them if they are doing wrong in God's eyes. If you don't tell them about the gospel, if you don't tell them and warn them about that there is judgment coming for this or that, then that could be also unloving. Loving is not just accepting
yeah,
everything. That's not loving.
no. And I think there might be a misconstruing of my thought on that. You you don't have to love what someone does. Do I love Hamas for blowing up innocent children and throwing them in ovens and stuff like? No, I can never love them for doing that. I could never love what they did. Could I have pity on them and go, I hope that they, get right and turn away and do what they need to do? Sure. Those are some extreme thoughts there, but let's break it down even further to something more mundane. And I'll use my own example. As you know, and people know in my life, I am bisexual. And according to some, that would be a direct affront to God because there are some scriptures in the Bible that talk about that. But when people want to point out what your sin is and where the Bible is faulted, you're talking about something that somebody has a personal attachment to, or personal, they're doing this with themselves, whatever it is, and you are judging them for that by even bringing it up to their face. If sin is brought up in front of them and they're saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, I need help, that is one thing. For you to go after somebody who has a sin that you notice is, to me, is not God. Because it says, don't point out the speck in your brother's eye when you have a log in yours. Let's be real. If somebody wants to talk to me about what I do behind closed doors, I'm going to get into their finances. I want your bank
Yeah,
statements. I want to know how much you gave to the church. I want to know how much you earned. Because if we're going to go tit for tat for sin, let's get to it. Let's brass tacks this. Like, I mean, and so we can get into a very nasty game of pointing out people's sins because we don't love the sin, but we love the person. And I have a very different view on that. You love the person and God takes care of the sin. Because if you show God's love, because that is our only commandment in the Bible, Jesus came out and said, your only commandment is to love the Lord thy God and to love your neighbor as yourself. You cannot condemn people in love. You do not have the power to do that. You are a mere human.
Yeah, we should not condemn, but he mentioned he mentioned the 9 commandments except the Sabbath. Keep the Sabbath. So so that's true. He said there are 2 that's most important. It's God, love God and love your neighbor as yourself, right? Those are the 2 greatest of all the commandments. But Jesus did mention, and you can go back and look at his discussion with the young ruler, the rich young ruler, right? And he Jesus in his ministry repeated all the commandments, all of the 10 commandments except keep the Sabbath. That's the only one that's not there.
And if you think about that example, though, just to push back on that, is let's talk about some of those commandments. If you
Yeah,
love your neighbor, you can't covet against them because you love them. If you love your neighbor, you're not going to steal from them. You're not going to
right.
murder. You're not going to,
That's
if
right.
you love people, you're not going to take the Lord's name in vain. Like there's the love part about it is the piece that actually covers all of it. I think that if we're going to take the Bible for anything that it is, and we're going to claim that it's 100% truth, every word that was written down, no matter what version you're reading, which that's another problem. But Jesus pointedly said to love your neighbor as yourself, because that covers all of the commandments. Because you can't break one of those commandments and still love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah. No,
So,
no, no.
so
That's true.
that's
That's
why I
true. That's
always come
why.
back to love.
That's why it's the greatest. The greatest of the 2 is those 2. It's the greatest because you're right. They encompass everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's a good way of summarizing. He was a very
yeah.
efficient man. So
No, yeah. He was not a fool. He was not stoned. He was not a stoner. That's one of them for sure. Um, the issue that I have with the LGBT community is that they are pushing it. They're taking a private thing. Nobody cares what somebody else does in the bedroom, right? I mean, Christians don't go and look, and they don't ask about that stuff. But the LGBT community pushes it in people's faces. And then there's the kids aspect where they are indoctrinating children and trying to, you saw the videos where they sing, we are here, we are queer, we're coming for your children, that they chant, right? And then because they can't have kids, so obviously they have to come for our kids. And then there's the issue. There was those songs that they sang. Did you see that?
no.
Uh, yeah, there's a choir um, of gay guys that sing, and they sing "We're coming for your children." And it's very nicely done, but it's very crude what they are singing. That.
Well, to judge an actions off of, and I will be very frank, a fringe group, because it is wrong. Like even if you say there's 100,000 gay people singing this, it's not the view of the majority of people in the LGBTQ community.
For
Um,
sure, for sure, I
it's
agree.
most if we even go back further, so like if we go back into history and we realize like what would be coined within the community as the Stonewall gays, so the people who fought for the right to be alive, to have the option of going to a hospital, to have the option of going to a doctor, to not being turned away or fired from their job because of who they ultimately sleep with at the end of the day. Um, those people are the majority. They just want to live. They want to go to work. They want to come home. They want to adopt children, which, let's just be frank, there's over 2 million children in the foster care system out there. Where are the straights adopting them? They're sure as hell giving them up, but don't have people adopting them. And to sit there and demonize an entire group based off of the fringe is wrong. I think the same thing about jihadists. Yes, it's a large number, but when you contrast it to the amount of Muslims there are in the world, there's a vast difference between who is the standard and
Okay,
who
I
is
don't
the
want to.
fringe.
I
No, no,
don't want to. I don't want to.
but
I
I'm
don't want to mix. I don't want to. I don't want to compare the gay people to jihadists.
no, I'm not comparing
Let's
gay
not do
people to
that.
jihadists. What I'm doing is I'm separating this extreme point of view that you have one or two, you have this group of people that are doing something, so therefore all of them are doing something, and that is not true.
Right. Well. The problem is that the LGBTQA plus plus whatever the thing now is, right? They are so aggressive, and it's coming out of these universities. And we're going to talk about the universities, I think, for
A lot
sure,
about
right?
university.
Yeah, and so they mock up things, right? People like Dave Rubin. Are you familiar with Dave Rubin?
Hmm.
I don't think he identifies as an LGBTQ or with that community, with that group, because of the radical um, stance that they take. Of this, the San Francisco and campus type who's exposing themselves in front of kids and just gruesome, just crude, very crude way of exposing their lifestyle and pushing their lifestyle in people's faces and what they want to achieve and what they feel that they are entitled to. Because they go beyond what you're saying. People of just want to keep go on with their lives, and that's the problem, right? And you get that in every, not just in among um, this community, but you get it in every kind of group because it goes back to the old form of tribalism that people seem to always get trapped in, where people, like-minded people feel like they get into this cult-like thought, cult-like think, and there's this tribalism that take over, and it's them it's them and everybody else. And in this political season, we saw that happen, where that gets used and weaponized. People get agitated and amped up and activated and um, to and pumped up about that in order to divide and conquer. It's a distraction that they use they use it as distractions, these issues. And we saw that, people get amped up about abortion, they get amped up about gender theory, they get amped up about the climate, they get amped up about, all these issues. But there's a much bigger problem, that a much bigger goal here. And these are all distractions. It's getting people's attention away from the real damage that's being done. In the end, no politician cares about those issues that they've been pushing for, and that they got these people all angry about. They don't care about that. Do you think a communist cares about who gets people amped up and angry about something that they care about that person? They don't. They just used it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about is when you get this, it's an extreme form of individualism. And so what it means is, like, these people only see their world through their point of view. And when you
Right.
do that, anybody else that is contrary to that point of view becomes the enemy. And once you demonize somebody as the enemy, as the monster, as the person trying to take something from you,
Exactly.
You become the moral superiority. And when that happens, you now have the right to do whatever you deem necessary to destroy your enemy.
Well,
And that becomes a problem because we're not talking about, hey, we have somebody, if you vote for this person, it's because you're a pedophile or you're a this, you're a that. It's not these evil things. It's you voted for somebody I don't like, so therefore you hate me and you want to destroy me, and therefore I have to destroy you first before you destroy me. Instead of looking at going, well, maybe this person voted because they need their taxes lightened and somebody promised that. Will that person do it? Who knows? But maybe that's why they voted. Maybe it has nothing to do with you because really, in the grand scheme of thing, you don't actually matter to the person in Nebraska who's living on their farm that has nothing to do with the world. But they see that their three kids are going hungry because they can't feed them. That's a very
it,
different point of view. And that's because you're too self-centered
well,
to care.
people are being indoctrinated, and there's so much propaganda going on, lies in the media, and so what's happened is, I mean, in this last election, um, people, the right was accused of by the left of marginalizing gay people, right? And then the gay people came out and said, no, that's not true. We are supporting him, right? And same with Latinos. They were accusing the Republicans that they are marginalizing Latinos, and the Latinos came out in droves, and they showed in the election and Black Americans, and just everywhere it these lies were exposed. You know, so I'm not even. I mean, I'm just talking about that. What they're doing is they're distracting people to the point where they have blinders on. They focused on this one issue. They're not paying attention to what's going on behind them. It's very short-sighted. They're basically being put in a tunnel, and they don't see what's really happening. So they get it's a measure. It's something that's a well-known tactic that's been used for many decades. The communist Marxists, use it explicitly, and so groups of people are pitted against one another when they actually have more in common with one another than the people that are abusing them.
Well, well, yeah, and I think you were kind of getting to the point I would be making is that person who's yelling, "You're going to deport us all," or "You're going to take away gay marriage," or "You're going to do this," and you hate our groups because of this. They can be just as misguided as I can be on a different subject, and
Yeah.
the point is they're still humans, and they got triggered by a thought. Was it a right thought? Was it a wrong thought? I'm not here to debate that. What I'm here to say is that they're still human. That person with the fear of getting deported, even if they're a legal citizen and there's no reason for them to be deported, it's still real fear because it was brought up to them that they would be. And was that a lie? Was that not a lie? I don't know their circumstances. I'm not going to judge on it, but you can still love people through that compassion. And I think we're kind of heading into the territory of my blog, which kind of gets into this as well. But the idea that that person is wrong or anything else, I could never demonize them for that. They have a real fear. The idea is that if I have a different point of view, I either have to be able to articulate that enough that they understand that maybe my point of view is a different point of view, but not coming from hate, or I have to help them understand where they are flawed in that thought process.
Mm-hmm.
But who am I to do that? So the best I can do is give my point of view in a loving way and hope that they turn around and take it like that, even if at the end of the day we don't agree.
Well, for me, I think that um, you know, I believe in a book. I believe that book is true. 60 books, 66 books, about 40 authors, and it's really the bedrock of Christianity, that you believe that those scriptures are based in truth and that God inspired them, and that the gospel is true, that Jesus, and then that Jesus really is, beat death and ascended to heaven, and that he is God. Right? That's a bedrock of foundation of Christianity. If you don't believe those things, you're not a Christian. And so that, to me, I think the gospel conquers everything, because you have the gospel. The gospel has supernatural power, because the Holy Spirit is fully behind that. So it's not about whether you're wrong or right. On this issue, here's the truth. Jesus is the truth. The Bible is the truth. The Word of God is the truth. John 1:1, right? The everything. If you want a stable foundation, or if you want to shake somebody's foundation, take truth away. If you want to make them unstable, take truth away. Right? If everything around you is so twisted away from truth that you cannot believe anything you see around you or that you hear, I mean, you'll go crazy. It's like the earth is shaking under you. You don't have a firm foundation. You're in an earthquake. You have nothing to stand on, right? And that is something that's happened in our society, is that, as with the collapse of values that happened in America, is we see it now, is that truth has been attacked. Truth has become racist. Facts are now, hateful. Objective reality. That's passe. I mean, that's so 20th century, right? Common sense, forget that. Math is racist. 2 + 2, you cannot say that. 2 + 2 is not right. That's racist. I mean, this is crazy stuff, right? They're trying to bend reality. Now, when you do that, you're shaking the foundation of people. You're shaking the foundation of that. And once you have truth, then you have stability. Then you have peace. And that's what Jesus said, right? So that's, I think, where, instead of trying to argue with people about all kinds of things, the gospel is the answer. That's the answer. Is, God loves you, and this is the only way to heaven and to the Father is through Jesus. That's the only way. But I want to ask you something specific. There was a debate between. Do you know who James White is?
No, I did not know that.
Okay, he's a scholar. He's a biblical scholar. He studies manuscripts, and he has his point of view. And then there is, maybe you've heard of Bart Ehrman.
Yeah, that name sounds familiar.
He's a biblical scholar. He was a Christian. Studied under Bruce Metzger, I believe, and then he became an atheist. He believes Jesus really lived everything, but he's an atheist. And then, do you know who Jeremy Cole is? I think it's Jeremy Cole.
Yeah, that name sounds really familiar.
Yeah. So he wrote a book, Jeremy Cole, and they had a debate. And the debate was basically, can someone who identifies as LGBTQ worship or be a follower of Christ? Yes. Can somebody who's gay or LGBTQ be a follower of Christ? And Cole was saying yes. He is a gay man. And the background of him is he says, I identify as LGBTQ. I identify with the LGBTQ community. But, and I have an attraction for men. I do not act on it. I'm celibate. And so he says, he took the affirmative yes. If you're gay, you can follow Jesus. And James White said no, and he argued for the negative of that. So I'd like to get your perspective. I mean, I know I'm throwing a big topic at you now, so I won't hold you to it. You can change your mind later. But off the top of your head, what do you think about that? Because it was a very interesting question for me.
Are we talking about the gatekeeping of Christianity? Because to sit there and say that one sin is greater than another and would keep you away from Christianity, and let's just be even more frank about it, to keep you away from Christ is such, in my point of view, a fallacy. Because you are then saying that there are sins that God cannot forgive you of. And then I go, well, who draws that line? Who is the supreme moralist alive today who can say, not that sin. You sinned 3 times too many. God's not going to forgive you. I don't know that God. The Bible doesn't know that God. So to sit there and to erase people from God's eyes because they have a lifestyle that I'm not going to argue the Bible on if it's right or wrong, but they have a lifestyle against you. I then say, once again, give me your bank statements. I'll tell you if you can go to God or not. I'm going to put a camera up in your bedroom, in your bathroom, in your car. Let's see if you can really go to God, because sin is personal. Sin has nothing to do with the world around you. Now, if we're going to argue the fact of can certain portions of theology or Christianity accept a gay person as a priest, I could sit there and have a little bit more merit because I think there's a little bit more background of the Bible for that. But to sit there and say that they can't be saved and they can't be a Christian, it's just, to me, that's the ultimate form of hate. To say you don't have a shot in hell, literally, to become saved because you're gay or lesbian or bi. Maybe I'm too personal with that, but I have a major qualm with it.
So yeah, so that is usually the reaction I expect, and that's kind of also one of the points that Cole made against James White's arguments is exactly that. But let's change that. Let's say a instead of limiting it to just gay, right? Because being and there's another question that we should get to, but about when is it a sin? Is it a sin just the action, or is it when you is it the attraction is the attraction also a sin? And this came up in a Bible study that I participated in, that I participate in every week, because we're dealing with a book that deals with these things, and so we had quite a heated argument, a heated debate on this issue. When is it a sin? But so instead of just saying, instead of saying gay, let's say, can a serial rapist, right? Let's use any sin, or a gambler, or a fornicator, or someone who commits adultery. Can someone who commits adultery be a follower of Christ? Who identifies? No. Let me put it this way: can someone who identifies as a rapist, maybe that, right? Or any sin, right? Pedophile, name it, right? Whatever. Okay. A thief. I don't know. Can that person who identifies as, let's say, identifies as a baby killer, to make something extreme, be a follower of Christ?
Well, I'll throw it back at you and be even more pointed. When was the last time you sinned? You
About
claim to be a Christian.
30 seconds ago.
Yeah. So the idea that the act of sinning makes you not a Christian is the point that I think Jesus makes. Like, we all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So the fact that we are now trying to play the game of which sin is worse, that's not our job. Our job is to love people. And do I think that loving somebody means accepting what they do? No. If I knew of a baby killer or a serial rapist, and I personally knew them, I would be not a friend of them. But it doesn't mean that I would take away the view that they could be saved, that they could ask God, they could say, I accept Jesus, forgive me of my sins, and that they could turn away and become a Christian. Even if it's in the last second of their life, as the needle is plunged into their arm, as they are being killed due to capital punishment, they can still be saved in that moment.
Yeah, that's
And
my belief too.
and any other thought outside of that is where we are now playing the game of cults. I get to decide as the human who is in this or not in this. And that's the thing Christianity should not be, because we deal with a way higher power than some mere human.
So, so my perspective on this is, and this is just what I'll throw at you now, and see if you agree with me on this or not. Once you become born again, right? That moment when that person decides they're going to follow Jesus, right? Because that's what that means, right? If you follow Jesus, you make him your Lord. At that moment, the Holy Spirit is supposed to, according to the Bible, become indwelling, right? Indwell inside of us. So you have a spirit. The old man dies. You have a new spirit. That's the Holy Spirit. And you become according to the Bible, a son of God. You no longer identify as a sinner. You have been sanctified. You are now holy. This does not mean you are not a sinner. This does not mean that you stop sinning, but your identification has changed. And so what happens is that the Bible tells us that we change. Something changes. That we now are at war with our sin. We're not at war with, previously we were at war with God. But then when we change, we become at war with sin. And so what the problem I had with Jeremy Yeah, it's Jeremy Cole, right? Is that correct? Is
I think it's that. I might be wrong on that one, his name, but yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. So
Yeah, he's a speaker. He does a lot of public speaking. He the problem I had with him is he comes and he says, "Okay, I am celibate, so I'm not practicing in this lifestyle. I identify as LGBTQ, and I need to be treated, just like any other person. I should be able to become a pastor. I should be able to teach kids. I should be able to be ordained, all those things. He wants that, right? And therefore, everybody who is in LGBTQ should also, right? So the LGBTQ is now justified and should be affirmed. Okay. The bait and switch is that he says he sneaks in with I'm celibate. I don't agree with the action, but we have to affirm all of them, the whole sin, the whole sinful nature. That and the other thing that he didn't want to do is repent of it. So he's not willing to repent. He's not willing to change his identity. So he wants it both. He wants to keep the sin, keep the sinful nature, continue in that, keep the identity as somebody who's going to, with what they stand for, right? Very, very radical part of it. But we have to affirm that the whole thing. That seems dishonest. That's not honest. And because I don't believe there is a difference between, the Bible says if you transgress the law in one point, you transgress the whole law, right? If you violate one commandment, if you violated all of them. That's what the Bible says. So no, it's not true that all sins are equal, for sure. Murder is not the same as swearing. It's not. God treats them differently. But we can't be hypocrites and treat people who sin in one way differently, and like you say, judge them in some ways because of that. And we all sin. Pastors sin. Everybody sins. The difference is, how do you deal with it? And do you identify with that? Are you repenting for it? Are you trying to follow Christ, or are you trying to convince everybody that you are right to do what you want to do, to just accept the sin and everything? That's the so. And if somebody came and said, I struggled with pedophilia, and that's the cross that I carry, but I'd like to teach, the Sunday school kids. There would be a problem. It would not be very easy to give that person that kind of freedom in the church.
yeah, and so I think this is a version of humans trying to rationalize the Bible and make up in their brain what is and isn't. To kind of go off of your example, once we become saved, Holy Spirit takes us over, we become changed, we're different, we go to war with our sin. We The way I always have viewed it since I was a young kid, it's that sense in your body that says, I have to hide this. And the second you have that feeling that you have to hide this, that's sin. Because that's, to me, is the Holy Spirit saying, making you recognize that you're actually saying that, because we try to hide ourselves. Think about the first time when even Adam ate the apple, whatever we want to call it, in the thing, and they first noticed they were naked. They hid from God because they knew something was wrong. Did they know what naked was beforehand? No, because they were naked. They didn't have no idea. They didn't know that there was something that should be ashamed of, some stuff like that. And when we try to sit there and play this game of like semantics, it truly is just semantics. Like, oh, he's gay, but he's choosing to be celibate because he doesn't want to act on that. Okay, so he's recognized a way that he can cope or justify with what it is. But let's turn it on its head to something else that we would also label. I have many friends that are alcoholics. Does that mean that today they are drunk? No, I have many friends that are sober. But guess what they still are? They're still an alcoholic. We still wouldn't let them run a bar because that would be too much temptation for somebody like that. And not that they're less than, not that they are good, or they're better than or less than anybody else. No, that's just what they are. That is their cross to bear. They will always be an alcoholic. If they go down that trail again, they will fall back into what they did. And I think that, but that is also a personal decision. Every single one of my friends that are sober today are, they chose to be sober. They found that this was not the lifestyle they were meant to have. Are all of them Christians? No. Some of them chose to do that and they're atheists. Some of them chose to do that and they're Christians. But it doesn't take away from the fact that they are now sober. And I think that's like a great example of a Christian. If somebody is Christian and they find that what they have in their life is a sin and they choose to not do it anymore, they're still a Christian, even if they know, hey, I still have same-sex attraction. And that will be my thing. If I go onto a porn site that is this, I'm now hiding something again. If you're not willing to do it on camera to the world, you shouldn't be doing it. Now, I'm not talking about everything. There's people that need to have fun. It doesn't need to be on camera. But it's that thing that if you're doing it and you're having to conceal it, that's when it becomes sin. And because you automatically already know it's wrong and you're already being convicted of it.
Well, some churches, and I think the Catholic Church particularly is notorious for this. Is just about everything is a sin. So when you're little, you know, you can't do anything. Everything is a sin, and you're just everything is terrible.
Yeah.
And
You breathe as a sin.
yeah,
Yeah, I know.
and and you have to gotta go do Hail Marys and whatnot. And I think so in some ways, look at the Pharisees, right? That's the Pharisaical thing, right? Where the Pharisees made rules and things, and everything is a sin, right? Everything is against God, and you need to make penance if you did this, and if you carried something on a Sabbath or ate the wrong thing or whatever. And the problem is that it could cause extreme guilt in a person. And now you have especially in young people, where you have a young person that's been told this is a sin when it's not really. It's just maybe it's something that's quite natural to a human, to a young boy or to a young girl, or to it's but you go to church and this is a sin. This is a sin. You're going to go to hell because of this. Now they have guilt. And but it's something that maybe they can't control yet. And so now in their mind, they built a hatred for church. Right. So this that's such a nasty way to approach people, because now you're basically pushing people out of the church with that, and you build a resistance to the whole thing. So yeah, it's a very tough question. It's a very tough question, but but I've seen um, in my life many times, and this one of the first ones was in when I was in high school. My dad, one of his colleagues, had a son who was, I mean, fragrant, just gay as a tree full of parrots. He was very, very gay. He eventually got uh, in a very tight relationship with another guy. They were both flight attendants for South African Airlines, and they flew overseas together always. And they had a beautiful townhouse in Johannesburg. And every year, I mean, this place was manicured. Oh, it was so beautiful. And they brought, artwork and just, ornaments and things from overseas, wherever they went. And this place was beautiful. The garden, the outside of it was manicured to perfection. Every year they won the, a home and garden uh, show prize, show house prize. They were so famous with all this. And then my dad's colleague's son, he became a Christian, and he became born again. And in that moment, something miraculous happened, and he lost all attraction. He lost all that, and and they went through a nasty divorce. Not that gay marriage was legal in South Africa at the time; it wasn't. But I mean, they were sharing everything. They'd lived together for so long, and so they went through what was probably worse than a regular divorce. But he ended up meeting a woman, and got married to her and had kids and lived very normal life after that. And I saw similar things happen here in America. So there is something that can supernaturally happen to people. I think I don't know if the attraction is a permanent thing. I think it can change. I don't know. I'm not. I'm unfortunately. I don't. I don't have. I
See,
don't know this. I don't. I'm not God. I don't know.
I think that comes back to, was it Philippians 2:12, work out your own salvation in fear and trembling. I mean, I think, again, we talk about the Bible being 100% truth. If that scripture's in there, it is meant to be there. It is meant to be used. It is meant to be reflected upon. And what I hear is so many different things. A friend of mine gave me a podcast to listen to the other day, and I never listen to podcasts ever. So I'm on here, but I don't ever do them. And it was a 3 hour long podcast. So that's even already a harder sell. But it had three gay men that were on there, and the host is a straight man. um and he picks different subjects, and it's not always the same guests or the same atmosphere. But it happened to be about homosexuality and religion. All three of the men had very different outings. All three of the men had very different religious backgrounds. And it's interesting how all three of them came to very different conclusions. And I think that is the clear understanding of that scripture of Philippians 2:12, work out your own salvation in fear and trembling. We had the first guy, he's this Australian, grew up atheist, hated the church, actually made it his life's mission to debunk anybody he could of the church. He was gay. He enjoyed all this stuff. He was ridiculed. He was persecuted. He had bricks thrown at him for being gay, um, and lived a rough life. So therefore, he really hated the church. He had a miraculous encounter with somebody, um, and got saved by God talking to him. Like, he's never heard the audible voice until then, and he got saved. And after a while, he decided to study theology, and he decided to become celibate. He realized that he was gay. He realized that it was his calling to devote his entire life to God. That's what he did. Such an extreme reaction from being, a gay activist,
Yeah.
um, to atheist, to a Christian who dedicated his entire life, every being, he's given up everything in his life to study the Bible and to to talk to people about God. Um, then we had, loves the church, grew up in the Assembly of Gods. I don't know if you're familiar with Assembly of Gods. They are fun. And they did all that stuff. He came out as gay, later on in life. Now he has the more loose interpretation of the Bible. He believes that he's a Christian still, and he still believes that he loves God, but he's not sure if the Bible is everything. And I know that that's a loose interpretation for some people, and some people will judge him for that, whatever it is. That's his relationship with God. He still believes he has a relationship with God. The last person was a televangelist son. He was outed on TV in front of 3,500 people in the
Ooh,
audience,
ooh.
because somebody got mad at him because he wrote an op-ed, because he's a writer, wrote an op-ed supporting Chick-fil-A. And they were like, if you support our oppressors, we're going to out you. And they publicly outed him. And so then he got, suicidal. He tried to kill himself. All these things that
Mhm.
happened when you outwardly condemn somebody when you have no right to. Um, and he eventually is around. He's still a Christian. He has come back to God, but he's still a writer, and he's still gay, and he believes it's okay to do that.
Mhm.
Three super different experiences, and who am I to say any one of them is right or wrong? Like, because we can't do that, because God tells us all that we have to figure it out. We have to find out where those lines are, and we have to live our life the best that we think we can through God. And anybody else coming in to somebody that they have no right to come into, because I'm sorry, unless I've given you permission to speak into my life, you don't have the right to speak into my life.
Cool.
And that's the way I view it. And I think that when you go into somebody's life without their permission, it's one thing if somebody asks you your opinion. Give your opinion. It's totally fine. They asked you for it. But it's another thing to go up to somebody and just outwardly condemn, or use a different word, judge, or point out, or however we want to use the phrase, because I hear it all the time. It's different phrases for the same thing. It's all condemnation, because you are not somebody that can free them of that sin. You are not somebody who can absolve them of that sin. You're not somebody that can send them to heaven, because you are nobody. And I'm not talking about you. I'm just saying it. Those who are doing this, like, they are nobody. You are a mere human. You have no more right into heaven than anybody else.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
right.
just,
Everybody has their own path
mhm.
on their faith journey, right?
Yeah,
So no, not everybody. I'm someplace, but I was, several years ago, I was in a different place, and I had a journey there. I can't expect people around me to reach that place and have my point of view. It's impossible. It's the Holy Spirit's job to make people. The Holy Spirit is the one that converts people's hearts.
yep.
We don't do it.
And that's the way I believe. Like,
Yeah.
we all get these, like I said, I feel like it comes into you as a discernment to know what you're doing is wrong. And
Hmm.
that doesn't hit everybody in the same way.
Right.
Some people are not in tuned enough to say that, but that doesn't make them any less Christian. That just
Yeah.
means that they haven't gotten the refinement yet. A diamond that is a chunk is still a diamond, regardless if it has all the facets cut into it.
No, God loves
And
everybody. He loves Christians and non-Christians and Muslims and Hindus. He loves everybody. He wants everybody to become his children, to follow him. Um, when Jesus was being nailed to the cross by those Roman soldiers who flogged him and ripped flesh from his face, from his back, from his body, as they were scourging him, right? Those scourges were those little whips, and they had multiple uh, uh, ropes
See,
on
you
them.
call them scourge. I call them cat of nine tails. That's what they used to be called in medieval times. It's a torturing
It,
device.
yeah, with bone and metal in
Hmm.
them, tied into them, and so they rip skin out. They rip flesh, not just skin, flesh out. They rip muscle out.
Hmm.
You know, um, and yet, and so he was basically almost beaten to death at that point. And now he's being nailed to the cross, and he says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Um, how could he have done that? How is that humanly possible? You know, to 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 look at people and love them so much to say that. You know, that's how much God loves everybody. And so that is also what Paul wrote, is that love is the greatest. You know, the greatest of everything, of all, is love. Right? The Bible is about love. But we shouldn't misconstrue love as acceptance of everything, and just um, so but I think that um, it is wrong. We should, churches who judge people and who condemn them and so forth. That's a big mistake, and that's what our church doesn't do that. Doesn't do that. But we want to be careful, though, about who teaches our kids. Right? You want to be certain that you 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 I don't know if you have kids. Do you have kids?
Nope.
Yeah, I have a 7-year-old, and so I'm pretty careful about who's going to influence him and who he's going to be looking up to. What kind of role models is he picking, right? Um, because his life is so malleable. He's so it's like Play-Doh, right? His mind is like Play-Doh. Um, and you imagine, just one pornographic image at this age could put him on a wrong track right now.
Yeah, but I kind of feel I definitely have a different of an opinion than you do on this, because the thought that because someone is gay or bi or lesbian or whatever, that they will be the negative influence on the child neglects the multitude of sins that straight people can do
Oh, I don't
and can
exclude
influence.
exclude
Yeah.
I don't exclude other things. I mean, I think everybody should be vetted. Um, no, it's not like it's just about gay. It's about anything. You know.
And that I think we can agree on. I think everyone should be vetted, but I don't. I think a disqualifier would not be that somebody's gay, bi, or this. I would say a disqualifier would be somebody that is gay who thinks 99% of all children should be gay, and then will try to indoctrinate them. Then, but if
Yeah.
somebody is just gay and they just live in their life with their husband and their two adopted children, there is nothing wrong with that in them teaching a child over, you know, Bob, who has been married for 40 years but has had 17 mistresses and
Yeah.
has a cocaine problem.
To me, it's more about worldview. If if
And you
worldview,
have the right as a
you can
parent to
have
do
you can
that.
have you can have a straight person, right, with a wrong worldview, and I would not want my kid near him anywhere, right?
Yeah, and I'm
I mean,
assuming your
so
kid goes to private school then.
private school, yeah.
Yeah, and that is the beauty of America. We have the right to choose who our children go to. My dad went to Hebrew school after high school, and that was the thing that they did for Jews. My mom went to a Catholic school and then a regular high school later on in life. Like, you can pick and choose these schools that give you the values. Not everybody has that option, so I'm not trying to be an elitist here, because it's not cheap to go to a charter school or a private school. But we have the right to do those things. Um, and I don't fault anybody, because I'm not here to judge you on your opinions. I'm not that the goal is that you don't judge me on my opinions. Well, you can't judge me. I don't care what you judge. But not going to
Well,
matter to me.
if listen, I appreciate having this discussion, and I like it when we differ on opinion. Even if we maybe agree more than we think, and we just talking past each other, it doesn't matter. But if we agree on everything, then one of us is too many, right? One of us is unnecessary, right? So, so,
Yeah.
and this channel is not about agreeing on everything. It's not an echo chamber.
No,
So
and
like,
that's
I like having,
honestly the only reason why I came on.
yeah, yeah. I really like to have these discussions, and be able to talk about it, and not be judgmental, not be having a scream fight or anything like that going on, but to able to exchange ideas, right? See the other perspective, right? But so this is probably a good point to talk about your blog, and because you just mentioned growing up Jewish and so forth, and in your blog you said something which struck me, is that for the first time in your life you basically feared for your life. Did I put words in your mouth now, or?
Yeah, no, I think that was a good way of putting it. So the the blog was stemmed from something that happened earlier in the week where I was sitting around people, and I'm not typically vocal about, number one, my political opinion, because I don't really care. I don't think I'm anything special. My opinion doesn't matter on this. But it was mentioned that if you vote for Trump, you're a Nazi. As a Jew, I take offense to a lot of that. As an American, I take major offense to that, because the biggest issue I have on both sides of the aisle is demonizing and dehumanizing somebody because they have a different opinion of you. And so this kind of like just bird in my brain, also being so close to the 1 year anniversary of October 7th, which was, for those who are listening who do not know, a horrible massacre of Jews and non-Jews at a music festival in Israel. It brought up so many memories and the fear. Like I remember October, I could probably pull up the text message too. October 8th of 2023, I wrote my friends and I said, not to be dramatic, but who would hide me if you needed to? And some of them were understanding them. Some of them thought it was a joke. I was in direct fear for what would happen to Jews, because what happened after October 7th was not come together, let's protect the Jews, let's get the hostages back, let's do all that. It was down with Zionism. It's the Jews that are at fault. Schools started kicking Jewish kids off campus for their safety. In Columbia University, they blocked off the gates and made Jews put on armbands that had Magen David's to enter if they wanted to. You know who did that last? The Nazis. Like, let's just be really real about who is at fault. And it even happened here at Virginia Tech. We had professors standing up with students condemning Jews, while the Hillel here, local Hillel, which is the Jewish organization on campus, got threats, had swastikas put on their building, had flyers dropped off at Jewish students' doors saying the camps are coming back. Like, you do not understand fear until it directly affects you. And I'm in the database as a Jew. I have taken the DNA test. I'm now there. It was a fear of my. Do you know that it's so ingrained in Jews to not do stuff like that? My aunt would not take the test because she was afraid of being on a list as a Jew. That's how fearful it is. And when that came up, I was like, I don't know how the election's going to go, but I fear that Jews are going to be the target no matter what. they're going to be the punching bag on how this comes out, because oh, it was the Jews that got Trump elected. Oh, it was the Jews that didn't get Kamala elected. You can say however you want to phrase it, because trust me, they'll come up with every last one. So I wrote that blog out of visceral emotion, to really give a point of view that I don't think many people understand. That your neighbors might have voted for Trump. Your friends might have voted for Trump. Your mom and dad might have voted for Trump. Your elderly grandmother might have voted for Trump. You don't know who voted for Trump. You also don't know why they voted for Trump. And it also shouldn't matter, because I guarantee all those people are not Nazis, because there are true atrocities going on in the world, especially against Jews. We see it in Amsterdam right now. And we using the word Nazi to dehumane somebody is so sickening to me. Like, I try to not lose respect for people because I try to understand their point of view, but you instantly lose ground in my brain if you sink to a level of calling somebody a Nazi without even knowing what it means. We should love everyone no matter what. It's stupid politics. Like, literally, like back in my day, we argued politics for fun. We all had difference of opinions, and then we all grabbed a beer afterwards. Like, it's just so stupid to me that it's this thing, like, if you vote for this person, you're voting actually against my life. No, we're not. Stop being dramatic. Nobody's doing that. Just like if Kamala won, no, we were not losing our lives. It wasn't going to happen. We were not going to get rounded up into camps. Like, that's not going to happen. But if you allow hate to continue to grow, it will. And it's very easy. Um, the first thing that happened in the Holocaust was in 1921, when the Berlin University closed its doors to Jews. They didn't get put into camps. They weren't killed. Some of them were arrested for protesting. Nothing else happened. Then the next following year, the banks came out and demonized the Jews, and so did the governments. And all of a sudden, 10 years later, we had camps. And that's how it happens. It happens with a simple act, and that's the schools. So, I mean, it just, that the blog was just a gut pouring out. I literally did it on my phone, angrily typing away. So if there's grammar errors, it was done on my phone. It's how I wrote most of my blogs. So
The October 7th attack seemed to change everything regarding Jews in this country, right? I never expected the kind of rhetoric that hit the media, hit the world, after that. I mean, I would have expected the opposite to happen, that now all of a sudden there would be, support for the Jewish community, that, there would be an outrage about what happened on October 7th. And instead, it was the opposite. Suddenly, the Jews are the bad people, and they are the ones being persecuted. It was insane, right? Then there was the Ben Shapiro Candace thing that happened. Candace Owens lost her mind. I had a lot of respect for her until that, and then she turned into an anti-Semite and started supporting Kanye West's nonsense. Is it right? Kanye West, right? And yeah, it's still insane. I don't understand what's in the universities, running and supporting Hamas and Hezbollah and Gaza, and so Ben Shapiro, Dennis Prager, Michael Brown, they all took flack for being Jews and for their points of view. And they use their platforms, of course, to try to, speak some wisdom into this insanity that was going on. But and this is still going on. But it seems to me that there was something brewing. This must have been brewing before October 7th, or did this come to you as a surprise as well?
No, actually, it was far from a surprise. So if we want to think back to even most recent history, we had President Obama getting endorsed by Jeremiah Wright, who is a known anti-Semitic pastor. He was endorsed by Louis Farrakhan, who has called for the eradication of the cockroaches in his terms, not mine. Um, he's and he everybody who knows who Louis Farrakhan is, but somehow we're okay with him still. We saw things like that happening. And let's just be really real. The fact that celebrities do this, I don't care. I think celebrities have zero pull. They are like one bad tweet away from being canceled. Like, I don't really care about a celebrity's opinion. What I care about is the one that you said, the universities. This is where we teach people. This is where we teach people to be critical of everything. Be critical of the Jewish people. Be critical of Israel. Be critical of Israel's government. But you also have to be critical of Hamas. You have to be critical of Palestine. You have to be critical of Gazians, which are very different from Palestinians. Like, let's just be real. And then be smart. You have to follow money. Where does money go? I think you talked about it with your church. Where's the money going? Follow the money and then make your own decisions. It's been happening for years. We have been breeding a society of anti-Semitic people that were just
How did you
ready to be oppressed.
did you notice that? Because I thought, wasn't there a university professor at Virginia Tech professor whose job he moved to a different university? What was his name? I forgot his name. And he lost the job and he had to sue, not Virginia Tech, but the other university, because they rejected his application because he made some statements, anti-Semitic statements, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, and I'm not blaming all colleges. Please don't take that, because it was also these riots. That's what they were. They were riots. They were not protests. They're riots. There's a different legal definition for both. These didn't happen on every campus, and it's very telling which campuses they had on. And it's also very telling which governors allowed them to happen in their state, because they didn't allow them in Florida. And you can say what you want about Florida, but Florida has some of the largest populations of Jews. Keep in mind, we don't make up a very
Yeah.
large amount of people in general in the world, but Florida is a huge chunk of us.
Yeah, they have a lot of snowbirds that and
Yeah,
people
so
who
my grandparents
retire,
are.
they retire from New York. They retire in Florida, New
Yep.
York, New Jersey, where most Jews live, right, in the United States.
Mm-hmm. And when you watch things like that happen, as shocked as I was that we were actually living it, I at the same time wasn't shocked because it's all there. You just follow everything. And that's the thing that I try to tell people, not to be dramatic, not to try to be like, oh, I'm gonna conflate something to something it's not. But keep in mind, again, the Holocaust didn't happen with Nazis coming in and opening up camps and saying, we're taking all the Jews. That was the last thing that happened.
Right, right.
There was a decade before that of priming the society to
Yeah,
allow it to happen.
and I think what Christians don't realize is that if they're coming after the Jews, the Christians are second. The Christians are next. Because this is the it's they're in the same camp. They serve the same God. They have the same book. Almost the same book. And the ultimate, if you believe in the Bible, then there is an antagonist, and his name is the devil, and he exists, and he's real, and he has the Bible tells us where this is going, right? But so in my mind, what basically kickstarted people like Candace Owens to lose it was when it wasn't the because it was when Israel started punching back, right? And the numbers that were being of deaths on the Palestinian side were atrocious. And so they were saying it's kids and it's innocence and so forth and so forth and so forth. But it was the health authority, it was Hamas itself that was putting out these numbers. So number one, you couldn't believe what the media was telling. You couldn't believe they were widely diverging reports about how October 7th happened. And then the Christian and Jewish faiths or beliefs or worldviews differ in this one aspect, among others, but this is a very important one. Jesus said, "You've heard of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, when your brother offends you, turn your other cheek." Or not, or if he slaps you or whatever, right? You turn your other cheek, right? But in the Jewish tradition, they don't have the New Testament. So they go by what it says in Genesis and Leviticus and Deuteronomy, I think. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, right? So Israel's response was also by Jewish platforms in this country. People who had big Jewish platforms like Ben Shapiro, like Dennis Prager. They are Orthodox Jews. So their perspective on how to respond was an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And this, I believe, offended a bunch of Christians who couldn't deal with that way, right? So they felt, no, we should be turning the other cheek, we should be forgiving, blah blah blah, And but they were completely blinded. And of course, it's easy to sit over here in America, and with your latte and with your sunscreen on and judge how Israel is responding to what happened there. Americans don't have any clue what it's like living in Israel. Most Americans never been there. They don't live under those circumstances. They don't know what it's like to fear a bombing or an attack. We don't have 2,000 missiles pointed at us.
Yeah, I mean, there's a saying in most Jewish communities, and it's never forget. It's not never forget what the Nazis did. It's never forget what the communities did. Never forget what happened. Never forget the ripples from the waves. And it's a thought process of if you don't forget what brought you here, then you'll always know those signs again, and then you'll take it over. And what happened on October 7th was a never forget moment. it was, we have a group that is literally calling for the eradication of Jews, not the eradication of Israel, the eradication of Jews. They have no problem with the Muslims that live in Israel. They have no problem with the Palestinians that live in Israel. They have a problem with Jews living in Israel. And to be even more frank, they have a problem with Jews, period, because the charter says to kill all Jews.
That's what Hamas's charter says. Yeah.
Yeah, is what their charter says. And so when we think about that and we think about what Israel is fighting against, you can slap a SWAT sticker on it and call it Nazis, because that is exactly, we're fighting that again. And we were almost eradicated during the Holocaust. They're never going to allow that to happen again. And it is not our problem that Israel has the most sophisticated defense system. So their missiles don't do nothing to Israel the same way our missiles do to Gaza. And so that is not our problem. But even if we go back to your statement about the fake numbers coming out, the most recent polling of the numbers, even if we use Hamas funded numbers, in war, an acceptable casualty loss is 1 combatant for every 9 civilians. So as long as you have a 1-to-9 ratio, according to the world, I mean, we're talking about NATO and UN and everybody else's standards of acceptable loss. I hate that term. No loss is acceptable, but acceptable loss is 1-to-9. If we use Hamas's numbers right now, and this was as of like 3 weeks ago, so I haven't checked it in the last 3 weeks, it was 1 to 1.5. That means that Israel right now is running the most compassionate war they have ever, that anybody in the history has ever put on.
Against terrorists who hide behind human shields.
Yes. And let's just be real, not every human shield is innocent. And I hate to be really mean, and I don't care if I get canceled. We have to think.
Well,
we have to think about this, because there was a thing that was put out, and I want to say it was CNN. Even they put out a video that they got of a school in Gaza with a bunch of 6 and 7-year-olds running around, and when they were being interviewed, they go, "We cannot wait to stab our first Jew. We're ready for this."
They get indoctrinated from a very young age.
Yeah, does that make that
Against,
child evil? No, they're indoctrinated. They're
they're
not
indoctrinated.
evil.
That's right.
It's not their fault.
Also, I don't know if you saw the videos. There were some videos leaked that about on of October 7th. These were not people in military gear, terrorist gear with AK-47s. These were regular people. These were young men, boys, girls, women in regular clothing coming to kill Jews. That's
Yep.
what happened, and abduct them, right? It wasn't so. So you have this problem that this is ingrained in the system. Did you read the Quran? Have you read the Quran? You said you studied all this.
Yeah, I've studied it. I will say that I've read the Quran once. Could I cite things from it? Probably not. That was a
Right.
long time ago. I was 14 when I read the
Okay.
Quran. So
Yeah, I've read the Quran cover to cover, and I cannot remember all the sutras and things, but I will. And I read the what is the other one? The sayings of Muhammad. Um, anyway, but he does say there are some passages in there that are very, very kill the Jews where you can find them and stuff like that, right? And same with Christians. It's not just Jews; it's Christians as well that they hate, and they want to. It's those who don't follow Allah. They're not Islam. And so, and also, in the Muslim world, a lot of Muslims are good people. Most Muslims, I think, are good people, great people. They don't want they don't want death to. They're not jihadis, right? They're not jihadis, but at the same time, according to the faith, according to Islam, every Muslim is a jihadist. Either by association, they have to support jihad. It's part of the faith. It's not something you can disconnect from the faith. So maybe they have a personal objection to the murdering and killing, but the murder and killing is part of that book.
Yeah, I am very weary of ever demeaning anybody that I don't think has done anything wrong. And the last numbers that came out, about 25% of Muslims they're terrorists. Let's just be really real. We can call them jihadists, what we call them whatever we want. They're terrorists. They're people who are out there to create terror in our world. But that still leaves 75%. And that still leaves a bunch of people who are not involved in any way, shape, or form. So we can tout what they believe, what they don't believe, but they're not involved. And so, and
Maybe,
I focus solely on terrorism.
yeah.
And that is the problem that I have. And so when we are talking about the indoctrination of children, when we are talking about the turning of media, when we talk about the dictatorships and the authoritarianism of it all, it's it's concerning that people would think that that has a right to live in our world, um, and that it should be defended. When I am the exact opposite, I say defend the humans that don't want to do this. Defend those Muslims. I have so many Muslim friends who are nowhere near like that. And on the flip side, I have so many Christian friends where I could probably point out 5 of them that would easily be reveling in the destruction of an abortion building and somebody died in it. But because of the destruction. So I know, just when I don't even want to use the word friend. I have so many people I know of different faiths that would be okay with that. So like it's so evil on every side, and we have to separate those people from the people that did nothing wrong. And that's why it's like I can sit there and say, I hope the Palestinian people are free, and I hope they get their land, and I hope they get to live free of Hamas, and they get to go about their lives. But I also hope that Israel gets to have their land and gets to be free of Hamas.
Yeah.
And does that mean that I agree with the Palestinian government or even the Israeli government? No, I actually don't in most cases. I don't agree with either one of those governments, but the people in there I do agree with.
So yeah, so just a couple of things on the comment about 25%. Yeah, the Mujahideen and the jihadis are a small percentage of westernized Muslims. I think you get the real radical ones um, in those areas. But I mean, if you just take an hour in America, and it's a very small percentage that would support jihad, through jihad,
Yeah.
except maybe just like in my old church when I grew up, they would find that if they dig up at where the money went, they are supporting jihad.
Yeah,
They
and I
are.
think that, like you said, it's indoctrinated in most societies.
Yeah.
Some sort of support of, well, if somebody else is extreme, let them be extreme, but I'll just help them if they get my cause across the table. That's society. Like that will always happen. Hands grease hands all the time.
So
And
so so
so
what do you think about the United States sending money and supporting Israel in this war, and then Biden also sent money to Gaza, right?
um
So
when
tax
it
dollars,
comes to
our tax dollars.
so first off, as an as American understand how the world works, um, we are a part of NATO and we are to defend the people within NATO. I am shocked that we are the only people defending Israel, but that happens a lot when it comes to Jews. Um, I, as far as I'm concerned, Palestine is not a part of NATO, so they made their bed. They have to root out Hamas. They allowed Hamas to take over Gaza. That's up to the government of Palestine to clean up their mess. They got to clean house. They're not going to clean house. Somebody else is going to do it for them. And that's the problem. So I don't have a problem with us sending aid. I don't think we should send people. I don't think we need to be in another war in any way, shape, or form. Israel has more than enough people. Trust me, I am scared of the Israeli army as they are badasses. They can take care
Yeah,
of themselves.
yeah, that's a
Trust me, they don't.
reputation.
Yeah, they do not need us um at all. But I do feel like we have to watch where we put our money. We have to watch where we put our people because I am an American first type of person. Like I said this to somebody the other day. We have to be able to put our own mask on in the event of a crash before we can take our mask and put it on somebody else. And if we're not fixing ourselves, we can't fix other people. So we
Yeah.
have to be whole first. So that's the way I view the world.
So, so I assume you. So I assume you voted Republican in this last election.
This was the first time I ever voted Republican for the president.
Okay.
I
So
typically vote Libertarian.
I haven't. I wanna move away. Just to ask you a question on the side here. That I've always found interesting, and I always ask this to my Jewish friends. So my son, you are what generation Jew? What generation American are you?
Like, you mean like I'm a millennial, if that's what you're asking, or you're
No,
asking
no,
like
no,
how
no,
many
no,
generations?
no.
I would
Oh
have been the
no.
third generation
So your
American.
grandfather.
So it's like my grandfather was the firstborn in the country, and then my dad, and then me.
Okay, so your great grandfather
My great
was
grandfather
was in the
was,
Russian was in Russia,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and he was a Russian Jew.
yep.
Okay, so my son, he's 7. He's born here. I'm a South African. He's an American. I'm white. He's white. I'm actually, probably more true African American because my family's been in South Africa since 1700. With my name. Actually, my son is Willem Odendaal the 13th. I'm the 12th, and but he will not be called a South African. So what I would like to know is, wouldn't Jews catch less flack if they just stuck to I'm an American instead of I'm a Jew? What? Because Jewish is not really, it's not, you're not religious, you're not a religious Jew. You call yourself an ethnic Jew, right? But it's not really an ethnicity because you're white.
It is an ethnicity because if you look into my bloodline, I have Ashkenazi blood.
Okay, but I have German blood, I have French blood, I have Dutch blood. I'm none of those things. I don't call myself a Dutchman. I don't call myself a German or a
So,
Frenchman, and
is
I'm
there
all of
laws
those.
on the book that if you have Dutch blood that you're automatically a Dutch citizen?
No.
There's laws on the book that as an Ashkenazi Jew, I have rights to become an Israeli at any time.
Okay, so you have you
It's
have
called a
you have
birthright
okay, by whom?
by Israel.
Okay. But is it necessary to call yourself a Jew, even if that's true? Even if that's true,
100%.
let's say South Africa had it on the books that since I can always come back, right? Which they don't. I don't have that privilege. I had to give up my South African citizenship. Um. So, but Why not just American? Why not like
Well,
me,
well, I think you're.
like me and my son? My son is an American. I'm a US citizen. I had a security clearance. I had to give up. I had to basically swore myself away from South Africa to do that. I had to
I
give,
have.
burn my passports, right? My South African passports. So, so, um, so what is the purpose? Why not just assimilate as and call yourself, stop calling yourself a Jew? Just say, I'm an
Because
American. And then why identify, why is it some way to lift up above other people? Is it some way to distinguish yourself as better than other people? Is it some way just to distinguish yourself as something that's different? What's the purpose of this? I mean,
Well, I don't speak
when
for other Jews, but I'll speak for myself. As a Jew, I am an American. I've always
yeah,
said American. I've said it like probably 17 times in this call. I am an American. I will always be an American. I'm proud to be an American. Being Jewish does not distract from me being an American in any way, shape, or form. What Judaism is and what being a Jew is, to me, it is a rich heritage that has been stolen from my people for multiple years. It has been something that was trying to be eradicated on this earth on multiple occasions, not just by the Nazis. It's happened for hundreds and hundreds of years. Our population has diminished and replenished. But the way that I
but
view
I
it
don't think the
is,
Jews are the only ones that can say that.
no,
So
but we're
there's
the only ones that are almost gone, if not the ones that are. There are a lot of people that are gone, and there is 0.2% of the world's population is Jewish. 0.2%.
well, fewer South Africans that remain. The English
South
killed.
Africa is a place. It is not a people.
It is a people. I'm a Boer. We were almost eradicated by the British
But
in the
you just said it.
concentration in the
You said I'm South
concentration camps.
African, but then you said you're a Boer. You're a Boer. That you're not
Yes,
South African. You're a Boer. It's very different. It's your ethnicity.
a Boer is not is a settler, right? It's a Brit is not British. It's the Dutch, German, and French settlers that became Boers. They developed their own language. Language became official. The British discriminated against them. The British were very racist
Yeah.
when they colonized South Africa. They are um, tales of British um, elites who hunted black people in South Africa like they would hunt animals. And they discriminated also against the Boers. The language was outlawed. You couldn't speak Afrikaans. It was in resistance that Afrikaans actually became a language. The Bible was translated in it. It was a resistance movement to translate the Bible to write poetry and write literature in Afrikaans. And so, yes, Boer is a specific group in South Africa. It's a
Yeah,
specific.
that's what your people is. And so
Yeah,
I think, and you know that history. Do you know why you know that history? Because somebody took the time to tell you about it.
yeah, and we
You
had
wouldn't know
history
any of
with.
that. You didn't live during that. You didn't live during the British trying to destroy you. So why even associate with it?
Correct. So, well, because we grew up with that, with a culture, right? It's a whole culture that comes with it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just like
I grew just
just
like
like Jews.
Jews,
Exactly.
and so
Exactly.
that's the whole
But
thing.
you can say
It
the
is a
same thing.
heritage.
But you can say the same thing about Italians, right? You can say the same thing about
Have
many
you met an
groups.
Italian American? I
Yeah,
have never
sure.
met an Italian American that was not proud to be Italian. Even if they are
Yeah,
the 10th generation in America, they're a proud Italian. That is the goal of America, is to be Americans made up of a melting pot of individuals who come from
right.
unique and rich backgrounds. Jews happen to be a background that is ancient, and it has been around, and it was not established in the 1800s. It wasn't established in the 1700s. It was established BC. And so
Okay, so it is elevated against over other people.
No, it
Because
is
of
a
that
heritage
longer
that we
history.
believe.
It has a
No,
longer
it is a
history.
heritage. When you want to come and challenge me to say I don't have a right to be a
No, no,
Jew
no, 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 no,
because
no.
because
I'm
I
not
should be an
challenging it.
American,
I'm challenging it. I'm challenging it, but I want to get to the
but
bottom of
I'm
it.
explaining to you why Jews liked it because we have a long history. And guess what? We don't have. We don't have files. We don't have paperwork. We cannot track our history past the 1930s because if you are an Ashkenazi Jew, you have no documents past Ellis Island.
Right. But so wouldn't it be for Jews all over the world, not just in America, wouldn't it be better to stop calling themselves publicly Jews and just
We will
say,
never do
I'm an
that.
American, right? And you can still continue in your culture. You can still, I mean, I'm an American. My son is not an American. He will never be called a Boer, right? My son is never going to be called a Boer. He's going to be called an American. He's going to have an American accent. He's going to have to American to
But are you going to
school.
teach your son your heritage?
Yeah, yeah, he does. I mean, so we have
And you're
special
gonna because you want him
foods,
to
and we
remember it. You
have
want him,
certain,
yeah.
and I speak Afrikaans to him, so he speaks fluent Afrikaans. I brought all my books in Afrikaans. Well, not all of them, but I brought boxes full of books back from South Africa that I shipped here, that I have here, that he can read and that he can, for him to carry some of that. But he's never going to be a Boer. But it's very curious. It's just curious to me because the Jews are different from everybody. It's just the only other groups that are along lines of color that does the same thing, right? It's like you have blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, Asian Americans, white Americans, and then somewhere if Jews. Why? Jews identify uniquely among all these groups in America and the world, right? And so I wonder if that isn't a drawing somehow
To
responsible.
deny one's history to make other people feel better is oppression in
No,
its
but
greatest
it's not.
form.
To me, it's not that big a deal to be called an American and at my house and in my home.
No, 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 no.
You know,
What you just said was that you won't find one American Jew that doesn't believe that they're an American and an American first. Most are Americans. There are some that are Israeli Americans because they actually hold a double what is it? Uh, citizenship.
citizenship.
Because
Yeah,
that's one thing we are allowed to do. We can hold a double
yeah,
citizenship
yeah.
between the two countries.
Unless you have a
But
secret clearance, I'm sure.
unless you're what?
Unless you try to get a secret clearance, if you have a secret clearance, you
Yeah,
cannot.
yeah, yeah. Then you have to fully declare. But
Yeah.
the whole point is that um, but you will also find a deep understanding that they are a Jew at heart no matter what happens, and to sit there and strip that away and to say you have to say you're just an American. You don't need to say this anymore because you're an American now. So that bypasses this. Now nobody will beat you up
No,
anymore
no, no, no.
because you don't have
Well,
that name anymore.
well, don't accuse me of trying to make it a law. Okay, I'm not doing that. I'm not saying, oh, you're up.
Nobody.
I'm saying why take on, because it seems to me like I'm saying it seems like it's become a target on your back.
Yeah.
It's like I'm saying I'm a Jew, right? Why not take it away? You don't
I
have to
mean, why
carry it.
not? Why
Why
not
not
tell
have
them to take
why
off their
that's like
kippas, and why don't you tell
it's
them to
the
take off their Magen Davids? It's like
no, but
you can't
you're
sit
not
there
whoa,
and
whoa, whoa,
take.
whoa, 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 whoa. You're not practicing. So now you're using the kippas.
Oh
No,
yeah, because you're acting like all Jews are non-practicing. So
all Jews are
so
not,
what would you
but
call
that's a
a Jew that
religion.
is practicing?
That's a religion. But Judaism go beyond religion.
Yeah.
It goes beyond religion, and I'm saying religion is protected in this country by law.
But being a Jew is not.
It doesn't seem like it.
Well, I mean,
It's
the point of the matter
supposed to be.
is
Everybody should be.
you will never find a Jew who knows our history, who knows where we come from, who knows where our families come from. Do you know how much work my family did tracking as much as we could of our
But
family?
who did
Like,
not?
we would never have that and then say, oh well, we're just going to forget that so we don't get targets on our back.
No,
And unless we're practicing, we won't use the word Jew anymore, because Jew is
no.
not a religion only. It is an ethnicity. It is a thing that we're born into.
So,
Do you know we
so
weren't considered white until the 1960s? Because that's what most people conflate it to. Well, you're just a white American. No, we're actually not. We were only considered white during the Civil War. I mean, not the Civil War, civics. I can't talk today. I'm tired and we're past our time. So, but it's that whole piece that we were only considered white because the white supremacists wanted more whites on their side. That's literally the whole reasons why Jews are not considered Jewish anymore, just by ethnicity.
so Jews were not considered white
No,
until the
no, not at all.
1960s in
Why
America.
do you,
In America,
yeah, in America,
yeah,
why do
I
you
didn't know
think,
that.
if you look at your history of the civil rights movement, Jews stood shoulder to shoulder in every single major civil rights movement with Black people? Every single one. Do you know, in the, what was it, the Mississippi burning fire, like that big thing that happened? Three
Yeah,
Jews were killed during that.
yeah. But okay. So that's the history. There's a nasty history for people. But now, are you considered white or not?
According to everything, we're considered white
Sure, that's what
here
I
in
thought.
this country. In every other
Okay,
country, we're not.
in every other country,
In most countries, we are considered, it is its own ethnicity. In
as
Israel, it's its
Jewish,
own
as
ethnicity. Yeah,
Jewish. Okay,
yeah,
so but I mean, we're all human, first of all,
yeah.
and secondly, there's no distinguishing feature. When I look at you, you could be Irish, you could be Scottish, you could be, just by your what you look like, right? You're definitely not African American. You're definitely not Asian. You're definitely not, right. I
You
mean,
wouldn't even probably know what I am if you looked at my blood,
no,
because blood doesn't,
right,
features
right.
don't make up an ethnicity. Yeah,
So
there are defining things to that, but like, if in all circumstances I was born blonde hair, blue eyed, I would be the perfect Aryan child because of where I was born. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't mean that I am not Jewish.
and also there's a lot of mixed blood in the Jewish community. So you're not 100%
My dad was,
Ashkenazi.
my grandfather was, my dad was, my grandma is. I'm
Well,
57%.
okay. So and I think it's also the same thing. The question is similar about the LGBTQ community, right? If somebody is gay, um, it's a very, or like you're bisexual, it's a very, and you're married, actually,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're married to a woman.
Yep.
Okay. But why carry that in public? So in other words, um, is it necessary? Steven Spielberg, we know him as a Jewish director of films. And you can list famous people, CEOs, founders of big companies, who are Jewish. They said they were Jewish. We know they are Jewish. Why? Why not just American? Why does that have to be a label that is so important to the outside world? I mean, there are in our community here, there are a lot of Scandinavians, Germans, you're in the Appalachians, um, and in patches in America, there are these groups of people who come from different places, but they're all American. I'm just curious, why carry that target on your, which is basically drawing fire? It seems. I have a theory that it's that identification, which is so that is held up so high, right? It's an identity that's held up so high that is drawing fire. And if that was subsided a little bit, maybe that would go away.
Yeah, I won't ever concede to the point that we need to diminish who we are and our backgrounds that we come from to make somebody else feel happy about themselves. So that, to me, that's pure hate. So if
I
somebody
agree.
wants to put a target on my back because I claim I'm Jewish, fuck them.
Okay. So I'm not saying this should be a law. I'm saying why it's a choice, right? You
Yeah, and
choose
we have
you
the right to do
choose
this. There's
to
many Jews that live in fear and do not wear their Magen Davids, do not wear their kippas. They do not practice openly. They do not tell people they are. There's many people that do that. There's tons of Jews that do that because they sit in fear of their life. I fear no one in my life. You want to come at me? Come at me. Then it's God's will that I die today. Let's do this. But I will tell you this: I will never sit quietly
yeah.
and allow it to happen.
Do you think that is the predominant viewpoint among Jewish
I
people?
don't speak for Jews.
Okay.
There's literally four of us in this area outside of the college, so no, I won't speak for Jews.
Yeah, there's not a lot of
Because like
people.
every part of America, every single Jew has a different opinion. And trust me, every Jew has 17 opinions about something. That's how it works in Jews. So
Yeah, and among rabbis, right?
yeah. If
Yeah.
you have 13 rabbis locked in a room, you'll come out with 15 opinions. It always happens. And I think the point of the matter that I always will come back to if I would get posed questions like this is the fact that me declaring what I am and the history that I believe in and the heritage that I claim, if that makes you feel uncomfortable, you are the one with the problem, not me.
Yeah, I don't think it makes me uncomfortable, but it does draw fire for people like you that make you write a blog where you say, I fear my life. I've never feared for
Yeah,
my life,
I'm allowed to
right?
have both feelings. Two truths can be right at the same time. And so I'm allowed to sit there and say, I am fearful that things can happen to my life, but I can also sit there and go, I don't really care because I will also defend myself and I will defend the
Yeah.
people around me. So
Because
you could be, do you think a guy getting shot at on the front lines of a war is not scared, but also still shooting back? It's going to happen.
yeah, but at some point, the training and the adrenaline take over, right?
Yeah,
There's really
exactly.
no,
And I
but
grew up in the ghetto, so trust me, nobody wants to fight me. They think I'm sweet and kind. I'm not. Really not.
so from my perspective, I mean, I I would not have guessed. Would have been the last guess I would have had that you were a Jew, and if you hadn't told me, I would never have known that. So for me, um, you know, I don't think I would have expected. I mean, if you don't say I'm a Jew, I don't know. I mean, why would you get attacked for being a Jew?
I think the thing said that when we come back to this, and I actually do need to leave after this last comment, because I'm about to be late for a meeting. But it is not the first thing I lead with, and I don't have to. It's not right. It's not anybody's right to know what I am or am not. And honestly, up until October 7th, I didn't wear my Magen David at all. I've had it for since I was a child. Never wore it. I stopped wearing it and I put it on. on October 8th. And I haven't taken it off. Shower with it, sleep with it, never take it off. And it came down to the point of, if you want to spew hate, say it to my face. Don't act like you're saying it to somebody who doesn't know. And I think that comes back to my situation of last week of being confronted, like for the first time directly in front of me, somebody spewing anti-Semitic hate by
Really?
using terms like that. And so I've actually had, since I put out that blog, I have had multiple people defriend me. I've had people comment on stuff through my stories and things like that. And it's pretty disgusting, the things you find out about people when you come out. And it's also very enlightening, and it's very freeing to be free of the weight of caring.
Yeah. I can understand that. Yeah, and I wanted to talk still about this Dan Bilzerian. Did you see his comments?
No, I don't. Honestly, I will be very frank. I try to avoid most people's comments. I don't watch the news anymore. I don't look at things unless somebody happens to send it to me, because I I personally believe that I need to deal with the people that are in front of me, and unless I go on a national stage, I don't really care what other people are saying. Outside of that, I believe I care, and I believe what the people around me and the people I choose to be in my life say,
Yeah.
and that's who I focus on.
Well, Josh, thank you very much for today, for coming on and having this frank discussion and debate about things. I really appreciate it, and I'm really proud to call you, one of my friends and somebody that I really respect for your viewpoints and the things that you do in the community and everything, and your art. So I really appreciate this, and I hope I'm not putting you in a bad position with being too late. So
No, you're okay, but I appreciate you having me on, and letting me share my point of view.
yeah, I think it was very interesting, and I think a lot of people might give them some things to think about, to hear that. So
Yep.
thanks, man.
Well,
I
all
appreciate
right,
it.
thank you. Yep.
Take care.
All
I'll
right.
see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.
Okay, bye
All
bye.
right. Bye.